Look, we found another check to Joe Biden. That's what the media said that they felt like this investigation needed to do to be successful. Find a direct link between Joe Biden and his family's influence peddling. We've already proven that he met with all the people that sent his family money. We've proven that Joe Biden's lied countless times to the American people about his knowledge and involvement of his family's shady business dealings. We've proven the family had over 20 shell companies. We've proven they've had all these bank accounts. Now we have enough bank accounts in, Sean, where we can actually trace the money back to the source. So we found the check to Joe Biden. This is the second check in a week. The first one was for $200,000. This one was for $40,000. But what's most alarming about this $40,000 check, it traces directly back to China. It goes all the way back to that WhatsApp message that the Ways and Means Committee.
The WhatsApp message.
How compromised is the president? Have people even considered the fact the president is compromised? Peter Schweizer joins us now. He has an awesome book I would highly recommend. The book is called Red-Handed. It's how the American elites get rich helping China win. Peter, I don't think most Americans have fully digested how compromised the President of the United States of America is by our number one geopolitical foe.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. I mean, look, you see people pay attention to the fact that this candidate gets a certain amount of money from big oil, or this, politician gets a certain amount of money from big tech. We're talking about, in this case, money coming from China. In the case of the Bidens, 4 people in China with links to the highest levels of the Chinese intelligence service have given one. That is a huge and enormous problem, and they have yet to explain what they actually did in exchange for this money. There's no tangible service. There's no product they sold to China. So it's an enormous problem, and if you believe that money influences politics, and I think most people do, that Beijing gave the Bidens $31 million, and they are getting things in return for it, and I think there's ample evidence to show that.
Peter, I don't want to ask you to speak on things we don't know, right? But I'm glad you brought this up, because I can't get it out of my mind ever since we've been talking about this. Okay, these people pay Joe, and these people pay Joe, and these people pay Joe. Yes, but what did they get in return? They didn't shell millions of dollars out to Joe Biden's second cousin's brother's dog for nothing. They got something. Do we have any idea what that something might be?
Yeah, we know they got favorable policies, and there's certain specific examples that you can look to, I think, that are pretty clear. I mean, the money started to flow from China, from certain politically connected and intelligence connected businessmen in China, precisely at the time that Joe Biden, as Vice President of the United States, was negotiating an agreement that would allow Chinese companies to be listed on the New York Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ, without having accounting standards that any other company on the planet would have to apply by. That was a specific carve-out given to China in 2013. It was exactly the same time that the Bank of China, which was a big beneficiary of that arrangement, started the spigots of money going to the Bidens. There are numerous other examples involving Ukraine as well. So, look, the bottom line is Team Biden wants to say 2 things. Number one, that Joe Biden didn't personally profit from this. Of course, we know he did. He got at least $240,000. But the point is, bribery is not ultimately about the politician themselves necessarily getting paid. If you pay their son, if you pay their spouse, if you pay their brother, and you are giving things to them in return, that constitutes a bribe. And that evidence, I think, is clearly there.
All right, we'll set Joe aside for a moment. I'm sure we'll come back to him. But he's certainly not alone when it comes to selling out to China. Just how many American politicians do we think are in China's pocket in one way or another?
Well, they're in varying degrees in China's pocket. The Bidens, I think, are deeply in. I think Mitch McConnell is deeply in. His wife, Elaine Chao, in the cabinet in the Trump administration, also served in the George W. Bush administration as Secretary of Labor. Her family owns a business, a shipping business, Foremost Group, that is entirely dependent upon the good graces of the Chinese government. Their ships are built largely by Chinese shipbuilding factories, state-owned factories. Those constructions are often financed by Chinese state-owned banks. A lot of the contracts they have to ship goods out of China come from Chinese state-owned entities. The point is that if Mitch McConnell as a senator were to do something to upset Beijing, they could literally destroy the family business overnight. And Mitch McConnell knows that. And Mitch McConnell himself has been a beneficiary of financial gifts given to him by his father-in-law who owns the business. So I would say that the Bidens, Mitch McConnell are two very prominent examples. And then you have others that to relatively, varying degrees have commercial arrangements or have been given the potential for commercial arrangements that makes it very, very hard to expect them to take a hard line towards Beijing. And that is the inherent problem that they are using, China is using the means to effectively buy off our political elite. It's a way of basically, hamstringing the United States in its competition with China.
The World Economic Forum, obviously people who watch this show are fairly aware of it, but let's pretend like people don't even know what this organization is. Why do they have so much power? When Klaus Schwab in his stupid Bond movie villain accent puts on some big event somewhere, why do elites from all over the world show up and listen to what he has to say? Who are these people?
Well, yeah, it's basically a membership club, and it's become a convening authority, a platform where elites from around the world can meet and confer on the direction they think not individual countries should take, not that their own businesses should take, but that the entire planet should take. My colleague Seamus Bruner has written a terrific book called Controligarchs, where he just came out, where he talks about specifically how the World Economic Forum came into being, what its goals are. And it really is a power represented by the sum of its parts. All the global elites, meaning a lot of world leaders, China certainly shows up, President Xi, and a lot of the biggest corporations in America send representation, and they're trying to build a policy consensus. The problem is that none of these people were elected to political office. They're not accountable to voters, and yet they want to tell us how our lives should be run. It is, I think, a very, very dangerous thing that we ought to be concerned about.
Talk to me about George Soros, and more specifically, I'm worried about his dirtball son, who apparently is taking over the family business. Should I be more worried about his son than I am George?
Well, I think his son tends to be more political than George Soros was, and that's saying something because George Soros was plenty political. I think the problem is, if you look at what their agenda is, their stated agenda, they are deeply dissatisfied with the status quo in the United States, meaning the form of government we have, the type of lives that people want to live, the way that people spend their money. So they have an agenda that really, I would argue, is leading to the breakdown of certain elements of American civic society. One of those being law enforcement. I mean, you've talked about it. Others have talked about how they are funding prosecutors to run in these elections in urban areas. And then these prosecutors get elected and they don't actually enforce the laws. It's a way of circumventing representative government. I mean, our elected officials have passed laws saying this is a crime, this is how it ought to be dealt with. And here you have somebody that Soros is helping to get elected who's saying we're not going to enforce those laws. So we should be very, very concerned about this agenda. And I think when it comes to the Soros operation, it's not going to get better as it's being passed to the next generation. It's actually going to get worse.
Right. Where'd the Clintons go, Peter? You don't hear as much from them anymore. Every now and then Hillary Clinton will pop up on The View cackling about something. But for the most part, these people have quieted down. That's not really their nature. Where'd they go?
Yeah, no, I think they've kind of faded. They used to be really the powerful force within the Democratic Party. And that has really been supplanted by Barack Obama. I mean, there's no love lost between the Clintons and Barack Obama. They're fighting for the same level of influence. And it's really Barack Obama who, I would argue, represents sort of the shadow government or the power behind the throne as it relates to Joe Biden. Many of the senior officials in the White House are, of course, former Obama appointees. There have been a lot of press reports about, of course, Barack Obama lives in Washington, D.C., and there's a lot of official people coming and going from his residence. So the Clintons, I think, have faded, not because they wanted to fade, not because they're enjoying spending time with the grandkids and reading books and reflecting on their lives. It's because they've been supplanted by Barack Obama as kind of the authority within the Democratic Party. And I don't think Barack Obama is interested in sharing that with the Bidens by any stretch of the imagination.
No, I don't think they are. Peter, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it very much. I want people to go read that book. Go read that book. Figure out what's going on out there. All right.